when America catches a cold, black people catch the flu, which means, when it was going bad, we had it worse, and now that we're rebounding, we are not reaping the benefits of that rebound.
What's up, people? Welcome to this episode of the By the Hood podcast or webcast, because I don't know how you're consuming this content. I'm your host as always. My name is Jimmy, and as we start off every show, that's with gratitude. Just want to send a special shout out to everybody who supports what we got going on. Special shout out to all the students from By the Hood University, as well as the members of the MDC strategy and the youth from the By the Hood ownership camp. I got my partner in crime, Corey. Corey, what's up, good brother?
It's really good, man. Every day above ground is a good day, so let's get it.
Yes, sir. And we are back with another one of our short Wednesday pods. That's our new thing, man. Short pods, some great conversations, talk about things going on in the world of business and finance and black wealth. This is very specific to black wealth, man. It was an article that came out. I read it in the Philadelphia Inquirer, but it was about a study that was done by the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. And I'm going to read it out. For those watching, you'll be able to see it. I'm going to share the article. For those listening on the podcast, shout out to y'all. We appreciate that. Give us 5 stars on Apple. But with that being said, I'll read it so you can understand what it is we'll be talking about in this episode. And it's entitled Broke in Philly. It says income for Black Philly households is stagnant. For everyone else, is up almost 25% since 2010. Then it says the median Black household income adjusted for inflation is just $2,000 more than it was in 2010. I'm going to repeat that because we're in 2023. It says the median Black household income adjusted for inflation is just $2,000 more than it was in 2010. That's 13 years ago, by the way, right? So it says economic inequality in Philadelphia continues to grow along racial and gender lines, and is following patterns in New York and Boston, 2 cities with much higher incomes and cost of living, according to the study from the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. A declining Black population in the city and a declining poverty rate for Black Philadelphians may also suggest that less affluent Black residents can't afford to live in the city and are now moving to inner ring suburbs. So that's also interesting. It's to the point now, so everybody wants to run out to the outskirts in the suburbs, but it says that's kind of where the poor people are going, because it's too much to live in the city. All right. Let me keep further down in the article. We have a lot more poverty and social issues than New York and Boston don't have, Shields said, because they've already evolved the method of having so much inequality that no impoverished person can even live in the city anymore, which is an over exaggeration, but basically. So what he's saying is that certain parts of New York, you can't even live there anyway. And Philadelphia wasn't that way, but that's the way it's looked like it's moving.
Yep.
So Black Philadelphians' median household income grew at the slowest rate compared to other racial groups between 2010 and 2021, just barely rising above its 2010 levels when adjusted for inflation, according to the analysis that was done by the Inquirer. While Black median income grew less than 6%, the median income for Asian, Latino, and white households each rose by almost 25% in the same period, right? So let me skip further down the article. I just want to bring out certain points before I let my brother weigh in on this, and we just have a conversation about it. So it says Black households earn more money on average in 2021, but the median Black household income adjusted for inflation is just $2,000, more than it was in 2010. Median household incomes for Latinos, Asians, and white people increased by about $7,000, $10,000, and $15,000 respectively. Inequality between Asian families and white families narrowed, the Economy League report found. So this is interesting. Let me just skip through this article. I want to read a couple of different things about it, right? Because it goes over disparities in income, talks about the income gap. We already know about the racial wealth gap. We already know what that is. We know how Black wealth is decreasing, actually, which is crazy. And although this article was written in Philadelphia, where Corey and I are from, it talks about how this is happening in other cities as well. So Pennsylvania has not raised its minimum wage since the federal wage was set at $7.25 in 2009. Josh Shapiro is trying to raise it to $15 per hour now. That's the Governor Josh Shapiro. The gender pay gap stayed mostly level over a 10-year period, with white women in 2021 earning 88 cents for every dollar earned by white men. black men and women earn 61 cents and 59 cents respectively compared to every $1 for a white man, while Latino men and women earn 60 cents and 55 cents respectively. So for every dollar that a white man earns, a black man earns 61 cents and a black woman 59 cents. Wow. This is the thing about data, Corey. People like to give you their opinion on how they feel, but this is data. So the largest positive jump was for Asian women, who were the only group to see equal wages compared to men of the same race. Asian men and women both earn 75 cents to every white male dollar. So in the Asian community, it says that based upon this data, that men and women earn the same. So in the black community, it's 61 cents for a man, 59 cents for a woman. The crazy part is Asian men and women both earn 75 cents, but that's still compared to $1 for every white man. So here's the part I want to talk about later in this pod. It talks about some of the solutions. And this is what I found interesting. One of the solutions they talk about is an adjustment to the procurement process from the city and anchor institutions such as hospitals and big universities. So what it says is either you have to have certain connections with accountants or people that can get you in the door, so to speak, but it goes into being able to qualify for certain things. So a lot of times we look at business and we look at politics and we think they're separate, and they're not really separate. And that could be its own show, but that's not what this is about. So let me just get to the end of this, and now I'll bring that back up, right? So it talks about policy and changes that people are looking at this problem, trying to solve it. But we always needs more solutions. But this was a great article. Shout out to Layla Jones. She's an economic equity reporter, writing about how government and corporate policy impacts people's pockets. So this was a great read. So, Core, we're gonna have to talk about a lot of things that are within this article. But first, I just want you to give me your overall thoughts on what I just read.
I have a lot of thoughts, but the overarching thought is that, when America catches a cold, black people catch the flu, which means, when it was going bad, we had it worse. And now that we're rebounding, we are not reaping the benefits of that rebound. So, with that being said, there are solutions not mentioned in there, which is we gotta be more about our business for each other. I said on our Friday show a few weeks ago how everything that I've ever attained in this world, a black person helped me get it. And most people don't have that experience.
I don't even have that experience, right? So, I mean, I have a lot of that experience, but I can't lie and say that there hasn't been certain folks.
There's not one. I can't think of a white person for real that really helped me do anything, because I don't.
But it's two ways to look at it for me, right? So I can't say that. That's not my story, right? But what I can say is I don't know whether it was always altruistic. So I found myself in a lot of spaces where people do things for me and help me, but it's also for their benefit, especially today, where it's like you need to have that person in the room. And a lot of times I like to take advantage of that and bring the
No. I'm not saying that it's wrong or bad. It's just my
That's your story. That's your story.
My personal experience, and it's because of the way I've chosen to live my life, where I want to do everything I can for black people. And so 99% of my daily dealings are with black people. So it's kind of hard for white people to do something for me when we're not really coming in the. It's not that they wouldn't do it if we came into contact.
I got you.
But I just don't come into contact with white people very often. And that, specifically, like when I'm working jobs, of course I come into contact with white people. But besides that, I like in my personal business and dealings and things of that nature, I very, very, very rarely come into contact with white people. And so it's kind of hard for them to help me do anything.
No, I got you.
You know what I mean? So it's not, again, I'm not even blaming white people, and I'm not saying anything against what they got going on.
You're telling your story, but go ahead and tell me your point, though. What's your point about?
The point is that black wealth really depends upon what we decide to do for each other, right? Because these big corporations, they talk a big game. They talk, these equity initiatives and all of this other malarkey, but you could see from the data, especially from the data you just said, that Asian women and white women, like when they do minority stuff, like it got to be specifically for black people, or the people who want to take advantage of it are generally Hispanic people and Asian people. All of the minority, as you can see, those people took advantage of all of the minority stuff that was out there. And not to say that black people weren't eligible for these things, but the people who were able to take the best advantage of them were Asian folks and Hispanic folks. And for us to be able to move forward in a way that's prosperous for us, we got to stop being scared to say this is specifically for black folks. You know what I mean? Like for me,
no, that's a great point. How I read that is also interesting because, Kamari told me something a long time ago. We were having a conversation. He was like, true wealth is built via the government. He was like, people like to say all this thing about business and all that. He was like, but
100%.
First of all, businesses allow you to operate, and then two, a lot of the contracts and things. And the article mentioned not just government, but also big institutions like universities, and such that
who get their money from the government.
But also, like, they have to hire people to do big jobs. Big jobs are big money, and that big money trickles down. And what the article was saying is a lot of black businesses just aren't almost organized enough to be able to take advantage of that. So for one, that told me, like, man, there is a gap. There's a space for someone to come in to try to help people get prepared for that level. That might be its own business in itself.
I know people who do that, who help people get government contracts.
Mm-hmm.
One of our closest friends does that.
Okay, but and I ain't trying to put nobody business out there. But here's what I'm saying though. I was talking to someone who has a minority business, right? And he's making a nice piece of change. But what he does is literally, and I'm not putting nobody business out there, like other companies make him a part of the deal to say that a minority business is part of the deal.
Yep.
And he'll get a nice check and won't do no work. So basically, he's leveraging.
They're taking advantage of the minority money by using That's 100% what happens.
So, and I know someone that does that. So, but my point is kind of what the article is saying is you can't have that. You have to have people that like follow through, because what tends to happen is people hire people that look like them.
Yeah,
I mean,
if money is set aside for minorities, minority could be woman, it could be Asian, it could be Hispanic, like anybody that's not a white male or a white woman. Or I mean, well, even just anybody that's not a white male can basically qualify for minority money.
So you don't believe let me ask you this question, Core, and I'm being facetious. You gotta know your answer. So you don't believe in the idea of BIPOC?
What? Come on, man. All right. I'm not even gonna make no comments.
Let me stop because I don't want to get
myself.
I don't want to hear no.
I don't even want to get myself.
I'm gonna chill. All right, so you think one of the solutions is to have things specifically, it has to be allocated specifically for black and not for BIPOC or person of color or whatever.
Yeah, because if it's not, then black people not going to have the full access to it. That's the whole thing, right? It's the same thing when they, when the government was giving out money for Indians and all these white people all of a sudden was Indian. You know what I mean? Like it's. But if you look at the history of it, every time the government give out money for supposedly for a specific, race, creed, or ethnicity, white people and people that is not specifically intended for get their hands on it. And so when you gotta be very, very specific. If you want black people to get it, you gotta say this money is for black people, or somebody else is going to take advantage and get their hands on it.
Yeah.
So you got to be very, very, very specific, because the way this country is set up, that's not. If you just say it's for minorities, you're going to have to define minority very, very narrowly for black people to be able to get their hands.
What do you think about the article when it talks about like Philadelphia, black people moving out of Philadelphia into the immediate suburbs because of just like costs, right? And
I know because I did it. So,
but it's saying that like Philadelphia is going to become like New York and Boston in a way where like you're going to have a certain level of income just to live in the city. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I make way more than the median for income for Philadelphia, and I still move. and it's because Philadelphia is the most heavily taxed city in the country. It's not even the cost of living, it's the taxes around that cost of living. Like the cost of living is one thing, but there's certain things living in the city of Philadelphia that are literal taxes on your money. Like they have a city tax, they have the Philadelphia Parking Authority is basically a giant ass tax. You got the sugar tax. You got
people,
like
yeah, but you got people. So I want to clarify something first because I actually did the data on this. Philadelphia isn't the most heavily taxed place because people say that, right? Philadelphia, from the standpoint of the number of taxes, is up there, but total taxes is not even in the top 5. It's not even close. And I did this research. I was talking to shout out to Miss Wanda Walker, but I was talking to her and I did the research for her. And I was telling her, people say that because they run with it. They say Philly has the most taxes in terms of this is a pure number. Like if you look down, it's a plastic bag. But in terms of what it actually equates to, it's not even in the top 5. It's not even close. There's a lot of places that are taxed way heavier than Philadelphia. First of all, our real estate taxes are relatively low.
No, the real estate taxes are actually.
And the thing about a city wage tax, the working tax, you pay that when you work in the city, whether you live here or not. Now, the thing about it is, it's interesting because what rings in my head when I read that is if people that own property in Philadelphia, it's going to become more valuable.
No, for sure, 100% for sure, because it has to, because that means the more affluent people are going to be moving to the city, which is going to raise the value of the property.
Now,
that's going to raise because then bigger businesses, because when the average amount of money people make goes up, bigger businesses start to come in. Not that Philadelphia, somebody has to service those places. Not, and again, this is not rocket science. This is just ABC stuff. You know what I mean? Like they're going to build businesses to serve people who got income. So like, it's just not, it just makes more sense.
So now, with that being said, though, there's also going to be a problem with displacement. So I'm not like a person that's a gentrifier that's trying to come in and kick people out their houses, but that leads to a conversation about politics, how politically that can be handled to protect long-term citizens. That's a whole other, that could be its own show right there. But it's going to have to be done from a policy standpoint, because the thing about economics,
it's never going to happen.
It's going to have to, right? And if it does, it's going to have to in some form or fashion. If it doesn't, people will just be displaced. Like, so that.
Do you really think politicians care about people being displaced? Do you
No,
actually think they care?
Well, that's a complex topic, right? Because
the answer to that is no.
But I don't think that's the answer. I think that we're animals. We care more about ourselves than other people. Diamond Dave once told me that we all care about ourselves. He was like, some people make you feel like they care about their kids. They really care about themselves, and their kids are just an extension of themselves. But that's a whole conversation. But point I'm making is, I don't think that all of them don't care, but I think that they care about themselves more. And if you recognize that the tide is moving this way, and a lot of people, so if we're organized, if people are organized and they're saying one thing, I've seen politicians flip-flop on a topic just based upon the mass amount of people, right? If a lot of people fall on this one side, and I know, and also I know,
go ahead.
I know a lot of politicians that actually care about people, but they can't do anything. So this is the thing. A lot of times we like to point at specific politicians as people, and that's not to say
I'm not pointing at
you. I'm saying people in general. But what they don't understand is this is a system. Yep. So it don't matter who you put there. If I named you head of city council or something tomorrow, even with your heart and your ideas for people, it's still ain't but so much you can do. I'm not going to turn around. I'm not going to turn around and say my brother Corey don't care about people, because I know you, because I work with you. I know you do.
Listen, I also know that it's politicians that do care about people,
but it's a system.
Politicians. But what I'm saying to you is that in general, we're talking about systemically and systematically.
Mm-hmm.
Politics doesn't care about people in the sense that the system wants to feed itself and to protect itself more than it wants to protect the people, right? And so, and you could just look at the history of this country, the history of any any system. The system is there to protect itself, not to protect people. And so that this is not a news flash. This is just how things work.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're talking about displacement is the natural consequence to rising prices.
But that's the thing, though. So what I'm saying is that's a system thing. I don't think so. I think that it's in politics is really all about compromise, right? That's why I would never want to be in one of those offices, because just based on the business, you're going to please somebody. But every time you please somebody, you're not going to please, because everybody has different motives. They have different things they're aiming for. So when you do something for one people, you're harming someone else. Yep. That's the nature of it. You have to find that medium, that compromise. And some will say, well, that's how the system is designed. The system is working, right? The system is what we're supposed to do. But that's my point. That's why I wouldn't point it at a specific politician. It's not to say that there aren't dirty politicians, because there are people out there.
All I say is politics doesn't care.
Yeah, politics, but not politicians. You asked me that I
politicians in general don't care. Probably. I don't think politicians in general care. I can name specific politicians.
No, we ain't gonna get on that. We ain't gotta name nobody. I mean,
I'm not getting into names, but I'm saying I know specific politicians that do care, but they're, like you said, their reach is limited because of the way the system is set up.
There you go.
But what I'm saying to you is that's because in general politicians don't care because they're not the norm. Those people aren't the norm.
I'm thinking about what you're saying, and I don't think that as politicians don't care. I think the system, right? It's a system. So even if all politicians woke up and said they decide they care, I still think the system doesn't allow it, because, and when I say system, I'm not trying to make this esoteric thing like the system. I'm saying the system that we live in, capitalism, right? Capitalism needs, shout out to
a certain lower class of people.
There you go. So
capitalism doesn't work without the lower class.
I was gonna say, shout out to Isabel Wilkerson. She already gave us the game.
Lord, her pen is the absolute, like, her pen game is.
If you haven't read her book that we're referring to, it's called Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. But she kind of breaks it down. Like, this system needs people at different castes for it to work, for our way of life to continue. And it just, you got to figure out where you fit in with that and how you switch castes. But her point is, most people don't switch castes. Where they're born is where they stay.
96% of poor people. 96% of people that are born poor die poor.
Yeah, and that's
that's the stat, and that was crazy to me. I was like, when I read that stat, because we talk a lot about people. We show the stories of people moving up. Yeah, and we show the LeBron James and the Jay-Z's and the, what I mean, of poor people moving up, and they put those stories front and center. But when you look at the stats that tell you 96% of people die in the same financial bracket they were born in, that's absolute chaos.
But that's why I like getting out and actually talking to people, because even myself personally, sometimes I get caught up in the bubble. We're around people that have achieved and are continuously achieving, and you start to think that, man, everybody's doing better. But then you get a reality check when you get outside your bubble.
When those numbers hit you in the face.
And data, right? So that's why data is important. It's not that data tells a full story, because you can make the data, you can maneuver data the way you want to, but it gives you an idea. But when you get outside your bubble and you start to see how the average person is doing, how they're living.
Yeah, man. It's rough out here.
It's rough out here. It's definitely rough out here, man. Which is why having these kind of conversations are good, and looking at this data is good. And even shout out to the sister that wrote the article, at least like trying to put some solutions in the article.
Yeah, she just wasn't just complaining. She was trying to get solutions.
But you need more solutions, right? So I'm gonna ask this to our audience out there, that if you're listening on the podcast, maybe you can hit us up. You can always shoot us an email. I'll put our email in the show notes, or comment on, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. What are some of the solutions for this? Let's be solutions based. What can we do about this? The article talked about getting more people qualified to get these contracts. How can we work on that? Like, what companies are close to being qualified that we can possibly get someone there to help them? So how can we work on that? But what are other solutions? Me and Corey have our camp every year. We teach the youth all year long at this point. So our camp is our thing in the summertime, but we're working with different programs to constantly teach in the community. That's our way, but there has to be a number of ways and a number of work that has to be done. So we're asking, we're trying to crowdsource answers, y'all. So if you're listening or you're watching, some solution. Put some solutions in the comments. What are some solutions to this? How do we close the gap? And is it possible to close the gap? Is it strictly like a reparations?
My thing is this. I mean, reparations was the jump off for every country that ever closed any gap. That was the jump off point.
Okay.
But the thing, you know what my motto is about reparations. They have to stop doing what they were doing so that they can reparations means to repair a wrong. You have to stop what you were doing so you can repair it. So our country has never stopped what they were doing. There's no reparations without the country stopping whatever they were doing to repair it.
Earl Simmons told us, man, you've been eating long enough, so stop being greedy.
That's never going to happen. So we can leave that reparations idea out of it, because a country has to stop doing whatever it's doing to you before they can make you whole and repair you. Mm-hmm. So reparations isn't a thing. That's just not a thing.
Got you.
So you know, like that whole conversations that, you know, and they putting it up to the bills in the U.S. Senate and all that, that's goofy. That's never happened. Because there's not enough money. You see what happened when this country gave out money the last time. We about to fall off a cliff. So reparations would be a bigger bill than that. Ain't no way in the world the United States is paying those kind of reparations that they would need to pay.
No, you know what? That's an excellent point. That you know, you're the first person I hear bring that part up. You know, maybe because I've been laying offline. I didn't think about that, but you're the first person I hear say that, right? So, you know, you cut that check, and then they'll blame us for that. Like, you know, the dollar.
Yeah, like this country will fall off a cliff. Like you gotta print that money. You gotta print that money. If they giving us reparations, where that money coming from? Like it ain't enough money. It's literally not enough money in the world for them to make us whole.
So this is why the conversation is different. Like, couldn't it be in the form of tax breaks? Does it have to be little printed money?
Give me tax breaks and free education, and I'll consider us, you know, I'll consider it that you thought about me. You know what I mean? Because right now they ain't even thinking about black people. But if you say, listen, you don't gotta pay no taxes in this country for the next, for the next 3 generations, 60 years. We're gonna give you 60 years, even though we stomped on your head for 500 years. We're gonna give you 60 tax free. That means my kids, their kids, and probably, you know, a generation after that get a chance. You know what I mean? If you give me 3 generations to catch up without having to pay no taxes. But the thing, this country can't do that is because if you look at our national debt,
we got to service what we
got to service the debt that we already got. Like, so that idea is kind of out the window, because, you know, like any idea dealing with the government giving black people money specifically is out the door. This country is bankrupt, bro.
All right, so let's leave it at that, though. For the folks watching, what are your solutions? Corey done shot down a couple already, but do you have any other solutions that, you know, maybe are on the ground or maybe more esoteric, whatever kind of solutions you have?
We got to figure out how to get ourselves more money. Like, we got to figure out to get it, because the thing about it is the people who control the resources control the action. And we don't control none of the resources. We don't have any control over the means of production or the resources. So we can control all of the assets in the world, but if you don't control none of the means of production and none of the resources, you still at the whims of whatever government that you see what I'm saying? Like, so
so let's leave it at that. I got you, because you in your bag right now. I'm gonna make you chill, because Corey about to get on his pulpit and go crazy, man. So with that being said, though, I want everybody to put in the comments, what solutions do you have? Is there a solution, or is it too far gone? Is the race over? Like, let me know what you think. Please leave us a 5-star review, whatever. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Buy the Hood on Facebook. Buy the Hood on IG. But let us know what you think. Interesting article. Great article. Corey, the last words?
You know my last words is always take care of each other, man.
That's right.
Again, the thing about it is specifically, you know, I don't like to say this, but if you're not specifically for black people, we are not the same. You know what I mean? Like, you can, and that might be a good or a bad thing, but my thing is this: I'm black first.
Marcus Garvey.
I'm not black second, third, fourth, or fifth. I'm black first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Then all of these other things, right? Because the thing about it is everybody else thinks that way. Right. The reason why we're so far behind is because we want to be people of the world and love is love and all this other malarkey that people talk about. But every other race looks out for itself first. Every other culture looks out for itself first. And then, when they see injustices or anything else like that, then they might try to, lend a helping hand. But they pick themselves up first, right? We've never done that. So at the point when we do that, then that's when we can, that's where our progress begins. So, love each other. That's why I always end with the same message. Love each other.
All right, I'm gonna leave it at that. That was Corey's last word. I told y'all he's ready to jump on his box. So
I'm getting a bag about black people.
With that being said, listen, as we always say, it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much you keep. Game elevates. We'll see you guys on our next episode. Peace.